Love, love, until I feel the breath of the Spirit flowing in me.
Hello, welcome to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine Lee, your host, and our guest is John McBride. He's a member of the Democratic Labour Party and the lead candidate for the Northern Metropolitan. Welcome, John.
G'day, how are you, Jordan?
Yes, you are a person of faith and also a person who's a candidate for the DLP for the Northern Metropolitan.
Yeah, for Northern Metropolitan Regional, yeah.
Yes.
That's it.
I'd like to know a little bit about being Spirit of Life. I'd like to know a bit about your spiritual journey.
Oh, okay. Well, I was raised Catholic. I'm a cradle Catholic, so I was baptised and come from a sort of an Irish Catholic background, one of 6 kids. I went to the local school, Mary Immaculate in Ivanhoe. When there were nuns, I actually got raised by nuns at school. So then off to the Christian Brothers from grade 5 to Form 6, which was HSC year. So that was the out at parade. So I had, I did the altar boy, which I was a very good altar boy, and that sort of stuff. So then what I did was, I suppose I drifted away from the church like most young blokes do, and went off, and I was a bit reckless and sowed some wild oats and travelled to Western Australia with a mate and actually did a few other things like that. And in my early 20s I came back, I suppose, to the church. It was I pretty well burnt myself out by a young age with drinking and drugging and carrying on.
Like the prodigal son.
A bit like that. I quite liked that story when I read it, when I remembered it.
Showed God's mercy for you.
Yeah, well, I needed a bit of that. I needed hope again. I'd come across a book by a bloke called Henry Newman. Even though he wasn't Catholic, I read that book, and that was called The Way of the Heart, which was a bit of a treatise on the temptations of Christ, and he introduced me, or I was introduced in that book, to desert spirituality and the desert fathers. I suppose this is the early 80s at that stage, and I was quite taken by that.
Yes.
Quite taken. And that was my that started me back off on my faith journey.
Yes, and hope sort of came to you.
It did. A lot of things were possible, and especially a relationship with God, which I desperately needed. I'd had a relationship with darkness and a relationship with hopelessness and those sort of things. So, and in this secular world, it was a bit difficult.
Yeah.
So that was tremendous to me. It gave me life again, I suppose, in that sense. Yeah.
And you also, what helped you was a self-help group that relied on also spirituality, on God too, isn't it?
Yeah, I found a group of sort of like-minded people, which was important for that journey, for the support. And it was about abstinence. There was no half measures avail us nothing, so to speak. It was about abstinence. So I had to give up the grog and the drugs and concentrate on a spiritual life, concentrate on producing that inner life where God's grace could live and grow in me. I suppose was the way I saw it at the time. Not all those people saw it the same way. I suppose that was my particular background, being Catholic and relying on that tradition. Yeah.
And as a member of Democratic Labour Party, it has a lot of Christian values, is that right?
It certainly does. I think we're the only political party out there at the moment that actually has God in our constitution. When you look at the history of the party, it was set up in the 50s by predominantly Catholics, but not necessarily exclusively so. There were some other people in there from different faith communities. So that ethos through the DLP certainly, I'm just trying to put it in a way that's understandable. They saw that DLP was set up to fight the communists. So we were not prepared to, in any way, shape or form, back away from the fact that we were Catholics and Christians and moral people. I mean, one of our members is actually an atheist, oddly enough, but certainly in line with our values. So, yeah, that's the background to it.
Wow. And what are some of the values that the Democratic Labour Party have?
From my point of view, we are a Labor Party in the sense that we are focused on working people, just ordinary working folk that want to go to a job, get married, have kids, educate their kids, live in the community, and the values that are around that support that, their freedoms, the choices that they need to make. We want to keep the statist governments, the socialists, away from them, leave them alone. If you just leave folk alone, the chances are they'll do okay, you know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, having said that, because we have a lot of faith in just ordinary people living ordinary lives, we're obligated also to take care of those people that aren't able to participate at that level, whether they've got mental health issues or whether they're sick or whether they're disabled or
Yes,
etc.
to
etc.
support them.
Support, as you should, as we rightly should, to bring them up to give them a hand up, and to stop discrimination against them, you know, so that we're all there. And you see that in communities. Coming from a Catholic tradition, you'll see often it's the mothers, it's the parents that they go and, well, my mummy opened up a kindergarten for other mothers. People form together in communities. They go and solve these problems that their community has, you know. And if you can keep encouraging that, and we would be very encouraging of that.
Yes.
With people.
So rather than put the onus all on the government to do everything, to also empower the people to find their own solutions.
Absolutely, absolutely. The socialists would have us believing that only with a powerful state can we survive and flourish.
Right.
But reality says it doesn't happen under a socialist state. The state has. It's important for the state to do some functions within politics, and it's important for it to mind their own business in other parts of it.
I see. Yeah. Oh, that's very interesting. Me coming from a social work which has a bit of a communist background. On that note, we'll go for a break. You've been watching Spirit of Life. Stay with us, and we'll be back after the break.
Blow till I hear much breath of thy spirit blowing in me. Blow, blow, blow till I hear much breath of thy spirit blowing in me.
Welcome back to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine Lee, your host, and our guest is John McBride. Welcome back, John.
Thanks for having me, Jordan.
Yes, it's interesting about the welfare state because I come from a social work background. I'm a social worker, and I suppose we were taught about self-determination, entitlement, that everyone is entitled to be looked after. But I can also see your point of view that could disempower people, you know, which in certain places we have seen that, like, you know, certain indigenous communities where people are just given the money without as much guidance. There's been very high suicide rates among the community and all this. So, what do you think about entitlement versus empowerment?
It's a vexed issue. It truly is a bit of a problem. Very complex. It's a very complex thing. If I were to take it back to its basics, it's about the free will decisions that individuals make in community for themselves and being able to take responsibility for those sort of decisions. Now, some people, then that's a learning curve. You know, this is the transition from infant to adolescent to immature adult to adult, and we should be about producing adults. I think in this day and age we're almost packing it into the immature, don't take responsibility, you only go so far. There's a whole lot of moving parts in that of why and wherefores and who benefits and who doesn't benefit in there. We come from DLP itself comes from the point of view that the best form of welfare is employment, is jobs, the dignity from work. You get a certain amount of dignity, you build some self-esteem from going to work, to paying your own bills, to building your own future, to investing in your family. A lot of these problems will disappear, I think you'll find, if we actually emphasise the employment. What tends to happen, or you could argue that, if you're looking on just an outcomes-based view of the economy, well then of course some are going to miss out and some are going to get profit, and the greedy will get a little bit more than the fair-minded. And these inconsistencies in it are sort of inherent within the system. But to try and crush the system, to force it to do that over here, you end up suppressing the whole thing, and eventually people don't want to go to work unless you've got people saying, well, why should I go to work? I'm not going to earn enough money to go and buy $1 million mansion in my first 12 months, etc., etc. Why should I pay for that? And they're getting in there. This person got a better education than I did, or they were lucky, blessed to be born in that particular family or this. It gets to be just a competition for outcomes where there's an expectation that sometimes I think it's unreasonable. Very difficult question if you get back to Indigenous communities. That's a whole different story. Very, it's a longer history, and I think they haven't been served well by all sides of politics and some of the interest groups that back them. And I feel for that. I really do.
Yes, there's always, when you make general policies, there's always going to be someone that misses out, and that's the reality, isn't it? That you can't make a policy that covers every situation. However, it sounds like DLP does have a caring and you're very family focused too, isn't it? And work focused. I like the thing of work because I found that in my work with social work that if we give handouts, people don't seem to have initiative to sometimes it's hard for them to better themselves. If we give too many handouts and if we don't require anything from them, they can take advantage of some welfare services, I find.
I think you're right.
Yeah, because human beings, we'd like to think that we won't take advantage of the situation, but if someone gives us everything, we get privilege, and it's if we have a silver spoon, it's hard to work, isn't it? If you're born with a silver spoon.
Well, there's a little bit of inspiration, which is poverty, to do better. If I have no money, if I can go and earn some money.
Yes, but there are people who fall in the gaps, which I suppose.
And we've got to take care of those folk.
Yeah. So what do you think about a lot of building that's happening in Victoria and what that's doing to country towns and businesses and just people who live in suburbia? What do you think about all this rapid building and transport?
It seems to be the competition for building freeways and overpasses and tunnels and what have you between the Liberals and the Labor at the moment. Look, we need infrastructure. We have a population growth that's huge, and it's not organically from here. It's driven by immigration. People want to come and live in Melbourne, which proves to me one thing: these are intelligent people from other parts of the world that would prefer to live in Melbourne than anywhere else, and I support them for that. What we have here at the moment is the influx of people we've had over the last 10 years has put an enormous burden on our infrastructure, and we're in the position where we've simply got to go and fix it. People are sitting in traffic jams, railway crossings, etc. That's no good. You can't. The system's breaking down in a sense. So we've left it too late. We're doing it now for something that has to happen. We should have planned that.
So you think more hospitals, more, more. Schools and all those things. So that's something that you all will be looking at to solve.
I think
Democratic Labour Party.
I think all parties are looking at it, and we're on board as far as all families need hospital, all communities need police stations, and we need schools for our kids and what have you. So this is all got to be done. Be better if we had a long-term plan like Infrastructure Victoria gave us a 20-year plan and we could all agree and move on, move forward properly. Because there's a cost. If you go and build $1 billion freeway there, you can't spend that on a school.
That's right.
So
yes.
there has to be proper decisions made for the benefit of all.
Yes. On that note, we'll need to go for a break. You've been watching Spirit of Life. We'll be back after the break.
Blow till I hear much breath of thy spirit blowing in me. Blow, blow, blow till I hear much breath of thy spirit blowing in me.
Hello. Welcome back to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine Lee, your host, and our guest is John McBride. Hello, John.
Geraldine.
Yes, as a potential member of Parliament.
Potential,
Yes,
yes.
the DLP, which is you're the member of, Democratic Labour Party, they're very pro-life.
We are.
Yes. You had a concern about the commercialisation and money making from abortion.
Oh yeah, I do. I do have a concern about that. We've seen Planned Parenthood in Australia, as Mary Stopes, I think the name of it is. I think there's a push factor there from them. They're political activists. They promote abortion. They support government. Well, those political parties that promote abortion, and I'm very concerned that they're lobbying on behalf of profit. More abortions that take place in Victoria through their system, the more money they make. Now that's, to me, is something that's serious, and we have to have a very close look at that. We have abortion in Victoria. I personally believe it should all be done in the hospital system, with proper doctors, in the public system, not this private, commercialised, specialised, as Bernie Finn, as a member of Parliament, the abortuaries, I think he calls them, which is probably very apt.
Yes, I do remember me once being a political activist myself, having a Mercedes-Benz from one of the abortionists kind of nearly hit me with the Mercedes-Benz, but anyway, I moved aside, but it was interesting because the police were protecting the abortionists as they went into the abortion clinic, and we were like the criminals. But we were trying to save the lives of the babies because me having a brother and two sisters disabled, I realised that life is very precious.
Yeah, and we'd agree absolutely.
From the womb to the tomb,
from the womb to the tomb, yeah.
As Democratic Labour Party say. So, and how does your faith, underpin all your, your political aspirations?
I think with my faith, it's a very good question. You should be congratulated for that question. I would say that it's about the primacy of God. That I live in a world that I didn't create. I think, and I've said that to my sons when they were growing up. Just remember, you're living in a world, you didn't create it. Okay, and you've got very little control over it. But God did, and he did it for a good reason. So I've always start from that sort of basis. Then as far as politics is concerned, the way that informs me is that politics is a man-made construct. This is how we work together as well, some of them are desperate, but disparate groups. We work together. What informs that? Now, there's things I don't like about other policies, and there's things I do like about our policies. How do we form a consensus? And it's about respecting the other person, their dignity, and believing that granting them the same sort of thing I want for myself, which is the capacity to exercise my free will and be responsible for the consequences. I think it's our job as politicians to point out the consequences of some of these other policies are not good. We could do better. I think is probably the best way of putting that in one regard. The rest of it is a complex, the art of possibilities in that sense. for politics itself. Yeah.
Yes, there's certainly a challenge with, because of the fear of discrimination, there's now a lot of suppression of freedom of speech. But some of these groups have suffered. People with same-sex attraction, people with gender different identities, and I suppose you would, your group wouldn't be about putting down these groups, would it?
Oh no,
Not discriminating.
No. Well,
Yeah.
we're not in the business of trying to hurt people or signal them out and not hurt them. It's not what we're about.
Yeah.
What we resist, or what I personally resist, is some of the narrative that comes with some of those groups. I'm not quite sure that a lot of them are genuine. I suppose in one sense, the sense that, look, I know the Marxists out there. They've targeted the family, they've targeted churches, and they use a lot of these groups. They infiltrate them and they use them as front organisations to achieve their ends. That's wrong. That's wrong, and that's why it's so complex, and I guess can get a bit hysterical too. A little.
I suppose that's where your faith comes in a sense of that we do our best and leave the rest to God, but we want to try and be fair to everyone, that they ought to have things like what you all espouse to: freedom of speech, freedom of people, doctors not needing to participate in abortions if they don't, because a lot of healthcare workers lose their jobs if they don't participate in abortions.
Yeah, no, that's the state's not entitled to. The state is not entitled to get into someone's conscience and compel them to do something against their conscience. Western society's had a long history of conscientious objecting. If you lined up as a conscientious objector when we were conscripting young blokes to go to war, we accepted that, and we certainly took you out of the system for a little while, but we accepted that conscience was
an important
part. Yeah, there's another word I was trying to find, but it's elapsed. But it's certainly primal. It's certainly up there.
Yes.
And the state's got no place in that. So it's gets a little bit more complex around freedom of speech. But if you have the philosophy that people can actually mature and grow up, sticks and stones won't break. Names will never hurt me, sort of thing. If you're prepared to go through that trial of abuse, and we certainly cop it in the DLP, you come out as a better person. You come out as a stronger person, and you head towards an adult. I'm not saying that people should be abused for the sake of free speech, but I'm saying it's the risk we run by having free speech. We would rather run the risk of that than having to suppress it or get approval from the Thought Police, who none of us are quite.
Yeah.
We don't want to empower that lot anymore.
Yes, well, I wish you all the best on the 24th of November, or for those who can vote earlier.
Yes.
And all the best, and God bless you in your election.
Oh, thank you very much, Geraldine. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You've been watching Spirit of Life. Join us next week. Goodbye, and God bless you.
Bring it to birth and blow where you will. Blow, blow, blow till I be but breath of the Spirit.